I'm Sean Fogarty from the Livingston District, representing concerned citizens of Spotsylvania County, a group, so I'd appreciate the 5 minutes, please. On April 9th, this board approved S-Power's SUP for Site A on a vote of 5-2. Sites B and C were approved on April 11th. There are several thousand Spotsylvania County citizens represented by our group, all opposed to the project. I feel that the board's decision was outrageous, and the 5 supervisors will soon come to regret the impact on the county. However, my intent here is to begin the process of exposing the outrageous backroom deal that was dropped on all of us by the 5 supervisors who voted yes that evening. None of you took credit for the amendments to the protective conditions that you provided to Ms. Parrish. You all bravely chose to hide behind Wanda and let her try and defend the indefensible. My primary purpose is to attempt to provide some transparency behind this decision for Dr. Trampy and Mr. Ross's benefit, as well as the public's. I hope I haven't mischaracterized their comments to me and others, but they were as surprised as we were. Next slide, please. This slide was obtained from the county as a result of one of many FOIAs that we've conducted. It depicts, hopefully you can read it there, it depicts several text messages from S-Power's lobbyist attorney, Charlie Payne, to Mr. Yakubowski. On April 8th, the day before the vote on Site A, he lists S-Power's demands for conditions changes to include a new setback scheme, I've circled it there, burning of 50% of the debris, and several new decommissioning changes. The text does not include all of the shocking changes to the conditions that were revealed the next day on the 9th. We are still looking for documentation of those other demands. Next slide, please. This slide was presented by Ms. Parrish the next day at the hearing, and it includes precisely the demands made by Mr. Payne the previous day in his text. The other changes were depicted in other parts of her presentation. Some of them are listed here. There were several shocking changes in these final amendments, allowing burning when the Planning Commission had recommended against it, and S-Power had already agreed to that condition. The staff report stated, it is important to note that the applicant did say to the Planning Commission that they would not object to the no burning condition. Additionally, as I recall, the fire chief had said that the pros and cons of burning versus mulching pretty much balanced out, and it made no difference to him. Yet it was included. There was a new setback scheme included that treats property owners differently based on the status of their site plan, whether or not a home was built, and where the home was on the lot. When asked, Ms. Parrish stated that the standard county procedure is to measure setbacks from the property line. This has never been done before. Finally, the irresponsible changes to the decommissioning conditions. 0 surety for the first 5 years and full coverage for county taxpayers not achieved until the 25th year. This had to be part of the last-minute deal because at the previous board meeting, Mr. Yakubowski had insisted on the full $36 million cash-bound bond for the county, but his position changed 180 degrees at this next meeting. Next slide, please. As evidenced by this excerpt from the county's SEF ordinance, the board's actions in improving this particular condition violates county code, which requires the applicant to provide a surety equivalent to the cost of removal of the SEF prior to issuance of a site plan permit. The board is not permitted to change an ordinance via an SUP condition, and in my opinion, this condition cannot be legally executed. So, S-Power proposed a $10.6 million decommissioning bond. The Planning Commission and staff approved a minimum of a $36 million cash bond or irrevocable letter of credit, with no credit for recycling. However, you, the 5 supervisors, approved 0 bond for the first 5 years. You shifted tens of millions of dollars in liability from S-Power to the taxpayers. Whose interests are you representing? Speaking of negotiating, what did the county get for these shocking concessions to S-Power? That is the question that many citizens are asking, and none of the supervisors who voted for this have yet to reveal. Next slide. Hammond will use this on his time.
My name is Dave Hammond, Livingston District. This slide also shows a text that's, to me, is troubling. It's from Mr. Payne to Mr. Jakubowski on April 3rd. It states that if S-Power is granted just a corporate guarantee for the decommissioning, it could free up an additional $250,000 a year. It remains to be explained how this freed up cash will be spent or where. Of course, we're well aware of Mr. Creamer's unenforceable promise of $25 million to the county. Mr. Payne even said it was not specific to any project and could be used for any purpose, quote, over the life of the project. Several times he stood at this podium and relayed Mr. Creamer's offer to drop a pile of money on the county. The five of you may not see it that way, but most of the informed public does, especially with no visibility into the deal struck with S-Power in the closing week. There are a lot of questions that we're asking and have no answers to, such as, when will the solar power for the schools be provided? What's the status of this fire station? When will Belmont Park be upgraded? When will road work begin? How does the $600,000 a year guarantee work? I mean, you calculate that out 40 years, that's only $9 million. Where's the other $16 million going to come from, and when? Mr. Creamer came to you offering $25 million for SUP approval, and you gave it. Now, you'll be going to Mr. Creamer with your hat in your hand, pleading for money, so you're not made to look like gullible fools. I'm sure you're hoping that they'll come out with an announcement soon. And you're burning up the phone lines trying to get an announcement made out. I also expect that once construction is completed, the promise will be forgotten, period. Your actions on April 9th to intentionally expose the county residents to unnecessary risks in order to save S-Power tens of millions of dollars was a stunning betrayal of the public trust. A total lack of transparency is exactly why citizens have such low opinion of government. I believe your legacy will be defined by your reckless decisions on April 9th. It may take a few years for the full harm to be realized, but by then it will be too late. We will always remember that Tim McLaughlin, Chris Jakubowski, Gary Skinner, Kevin Marshall, and Greg Benton sold us out and are personally responsible. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who did not sign up who wishes to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period.
And Carl, I know you told me to be quiet on this, but I knew this was going to keep on coming up, and I'm going to speak in reference to the SUPs. Number one, I keep on hearing this thing about our citizens being informed. Well, informed by who? The concerned citizens? Because I think most of the stuff y'all brought forward was debunked and found false. The Freelance Star, they print an article saying they're against this, but they don't let us know that the publisher lives in Fawn Lake. Imagine that. You talk about transparency. We have a person that was employed by a petroleum company. Well, I'm about his age. I think he's got a couple years on me. And I can remember growing up as a little boy coming through the years, and I can't tell you how many times that company was involved in spills and environmental disasters, ecological disasters, but this gentleman still had his hand out for his paycheck. I guess he wasn't, maybe didn't have the back done to walk away when he sees the problems going on with that, but yet he wants to step forward about a solar panel sitting out in the middle of a field with rainwater running on it. As far as some of the abatements and stuff that keeps on being brought up and some of these things going on, We had a state senator that initially told us that he had no problems with it. It was a local problem or issue. And all of a sudden we find out that, this individual's voted for the 80% tax abatements. He's at least gone on legislation wanting to allow for recycling, et cetera, like that. Well, we had legislation to go on that's been written and out there for recycling. So, we had all kinds of things to consider during this proposal and project that came before us. It wasn't willy-nilly, and we didn't, unlike some, I'm going to be careful, trying to be careful with my words here. Some maybe other political opponents that would, federal or state, that would be out there that would succumb to pressures of a minority, because there's 134,000 or plus in this county, and we've been touted that there's 4,000 that were against it. Well, there's a big number difference right there. And I saw many and got many calls and phone calls, at my home and on my cell, in reference to the support for this project. We had a group that goes out and attacks a little kid at his school, wanting to kick him out of one school because his father is using an address that puts him in that school that maybe he shouldn't be, but for child care uses. They attack that gentleman that works at the Fawn Lake, personally attacks him. And then they want to tout and complain about how they're not being heard and why nobody's coming out in public and speaking up in support of this. I just find it very, very interesting how this all comes about, and then how we're, on their site now. I'm going to be in charge of S-Power security. They paid for a cruise that my wife and I saved up for over 2.5 years to take my family on, and crap like that. And you wonder why people don't want to come forward and talk and say anything. I know a good number of folks out in Fawn Lake that are everyday citizens. They work hard, they've earned their money, and they don't act like little entitled, spoiled brats. And they're not going to go around forcing me or anybody else, as far as my family, as far as changing the minds of, and all the man hours that I spent looking into this project, our engineers, our staff. It's not uncommon for a supervisor to try to get with a project that's proposed and try to protect the citizens and the environment and everything else during a project, to make sure that all aspects are covered and everything else. And then when you have the legislation on top of that comes and kind of hand ties us, certainly setting a precedent for us to have to go by. I'm sure they're not going to stop. I expect for every meeting now until S-Power's probably built out that we'll be hearing how atrocious our votes were. But I can tell the citizens out there that we spent many, many, many hours, our personal time, in reading all the plethora of documents that were supplied to us by all areas of this, the county, the company, and the concerned citizens. And we didn't take our decisions lightly. We voted for the best for the county and for the citizens. And, it's a shame that a Walmart can come in and have hardly nothing. But just because a small area of our county that touts that this has never been done, which was false, close to a residential area, that they're more important than anybody else, I guess. Anyway, I'm hoping we can put this to rest, and hope in the long run we see the promises made come to fruition, and lay this to rest for once and for all. I look forward for it to get going and be done, and I guess I'll have to look forward for the next, at least my remaining months of my term, listening to how horrible we were and how little time and how we didn't listen to their great knowledge that they brought upon us. Although other engineers, and it's funny, I even had some school teachers talk about the cadmium telluride, and some of the concerned citizens, what they put forth. And you talk about engineering 101, that was brought up one time. They said that gentleman should know that it's different. So without saying names and stuff like that, I look forward to y'all's continued comments, and you do your God-given right as our country allows, and you come, I'm sure we'll see you every meeting as we did before, and you can tout whatever you want to tout. But sorry, Carl, I just couldn't be quiet about it anymore. You're attacking some good men up here that have put their heart and soul into this community. We certainly don't do it for the money. It's a joke if somebody thinks so. And for somebody to accuse any of us of taking backroom monies or anything else, shame on you. Instead of threatening our elections and everything else, why don't you run for election? Step up, be the man and come forward, and then you deal with it. Have at it.
Mr. Marshall?